Late Night Health continues. One of my favorite parts of the show is when we get to spend some time with my friend Robert Clancy, the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Soul and so many other things. He's got a great daily inspirational blog that you should check out, and you can find out more about that by going to latenighthealth.com and looking up Robert Clancy, and it'll have a website and all kinds of information on him. Robert, you have some thoughts on breakdowns that you'd like to share.
Yeah, thank you for having me back on. It's great to connect with you again, Mark. And yeah, I was thinking about breakdowns, and today's inspirational thought is, it doesn't take effort to break new ground in life. You know, it does take that effort, but sometimes this can cause a breakdown. Know your limits and know when to dial it back. When the universe speaks, listen with all of your heart. And how often do we keep pushing on something only to find it isn't working? You ever had one of those days? It's frustrating, to say the least.
Absolutely.
This could be a message, that I find for your mind, body, and spirit to slow down or find a different approach. And it's never a bad idea to put your life into neutral for a short time.
Robert, people, they're going along hectic 21st century lifestyle, and what happens is they break down. There's some kind of, explosion in the brain. Some people, unfortunately, kill somebody else. They have accidents. They go crazy and yell and scream. How do you avoid that? I mean, there's a buildup to that, isn't there?
There is. And, when you're feeling that buildup, it's just a time that you might need to you've got too much going on. You need to dial some things back. And I often find that when you get overwhelmed with things, it's great to write them down and see it. Because once you see what's really your worries or your hot points in your life, you can address them in a logical way. So seeing it is half of the battle, and then also just taking that pause.
Robert Clancy, he will be back next week. And next week, we're going to be talking about silver linings. So stay tuned for that next week here on Late Night Health. More coming up. Late Night Health continues. Have you ever gone to the doctor and, you've got a pain, you've got the flu, you've got something wrong, you don't know exactly what it is. Doctor comes in, whizzes in, says, "What's wrong?" Starts writing, doesn't really listen to you. Well, 10 years of really groundbreaking research has led to a new book called Listening for What Matters. Our guests are Dr. Saul Weiner and Dr. Alan Schwartz. Dr. Schwartz is an MD. Dr. Weiner, did I get that right? Yeah. No, Dr. Weiner is the MD. Dr. Schwartz is a PH.D. And they have come up with a book based on their research, Listening for What Matters, Avoiding Contextual Errors in Healthcare. The doctors screw up a lot, guys?
We can both answer that, but this is Saul here, Saul Weiner. I'm the one with the MD. You got us correct.
Oh, good.
I think the word screw up requires a little bit of elaboration. There has been a lot of concern about medical error, and so it's a real issue. And I think you may be aware that even going back to the late 1990s, there was data that was very alarming that somewhere between 50 and 100,000 people a year die because of medical error. So yes, there is a lot of medical error, but we focus on a particular kind of error that really hasn't gotten much attention. We're interested in situations where it looks like the patient got the right care, the guideline was followed, it was followed, the best evidence, the best scientific studies are all, in line and have been used, but the care is wrong for that individual. So, for instance, if a patient's chronic condition is getting worse because they can't afford their medicine and they're not taking it on a regular basis, if that issue isn't addressed or recognized and the doctor just keeps adding new medicines, that would be what we would call a contextual error. In the medical record, it looks like the patient is getting the right care. The doctor's adding medicines. It looks like that's appropriate. But in fact, if you were a fly on the wall, you would know that it makes no sense in that situation. And that's what we've been studying, and we've been seeing a lot of it.
I know that doctors, are bombarded with new drugs, because that's their training. They have new ways of treating a variety of illnesses, from diabetes to heart conditions, okay? How you guys keep up with that is beyond me. It's not humanly possible, in my opinion. That's one. And two, with the shortened period of time for listening to the patient, because you've got to get so many patients in during your office hours, it would seem to me that there would be errors just in that part. And that would be part of the research as well.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. And you're right that there are a lot of pressures on doctors in the current system, new medications and treatments, as well as time. But when we study how well doctors do at tailoring their care to an individual patient, it turns out that the doctors that do a good job at that don't take any longer to do it than the doctors that don't do a good job at it.
So it's listening.
It's listening, and it's engaging with the patient in a way that you're constantly asking yourself, what does this person need? What is the right thing for this patient at this time?
I know that
we've actually been. I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
We've actually been wrestling with how you study this for years, and what Alan's getting at has turned into a kind of almost a scientific methodology for us. So we started by hiring, as you know, a team of actors to work as undercover patients and to drop specific clues. You could kind of think of them as little bombshells. Boy, doc, it's been tough since I've lost my job, or something along those lines. And then we listen to see, because we're audio recording the encounters, what the doctor does, whether they pick up on that clue or whether they miss it. And I think what Alan's getting at is we found that, the doctors who pick up on those clues and say, well, tell me about that, what's going on, those visits are not longer. The doctor is just, they're picking up on things that the other doctors miss. Another doctor might just say, oh, I'm sorry you lost your job. Do you have any allergies? And just kind of plow right through, not realizing that that's a critical piece of information that's coming from the patient. So what we found, and because we're audio recording these and we have the timestamps on the audio recordings, we know exactly how much time the doctor's spending with the patient. And when we do this using actors, the actors are trained to do exactly the same thing at each visit. So it's actually kind of like an apples-to-apples comparison.
Interesting. The compliance issue. Do doctors say, all right, we want you to take this pill 3 times a day. We want you to go to physical therapy 3 times a week. Compliance is 50% of patients, even if told, my understanding is, take this pill 3 times a day or you will die. 50% of the people won't do it. And
I think yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I think that's a critical point, and I think it's interesting because a lot of people, maybe we watch too many TV shows about doctors, think that what makes for great doctoring is sort of being some sort of brilliant diagnostician. And while that's important occasionally, most of the time, most of the challenges in healthcare are exactly what you're describing. It's not rocket science that the patient has high blood pressure, that they have diabetes. What is rocket science is figuring out how you're going to help them be successful at managing it. And as you said, a lot of patients don't take their pills even when they really need to. And what we've learned is it's not because they're somehow, masochistic or self-defeating. It's that they have a variety of life challenges that are not being considered or addressed. It could be the truck driver whose insulin is freezing, or it could be, the person who works the night shift and they can't, take their medicine when they're supposed to, or it could be the person who has overwhelming, responsibilities taking care of a sick, parent or child or spouse. And so, what we found is that what you're saying is critical, and that but where the health system is failing is the health system isn't really identifying and helping patients with those challenges.
I tell everybody that everybody has to sell. You guys, when you wrote your book, had to sell it to a publisher. Okay? Either that or you went through a literary agent and they sold it, but you had to sell the agent. Okay? Everybody sells. You have a new patient come in, and if you've been smoking a cigarette, eating a lot of garlic, haven't brushed your teeth in a week, I personally would walk out. Okay? And because to me, that would be part of the selling that they don't teach in medical school or psychology school. So that part of that selling to the patient is selling and promoting health for the patient. Mark, if you don't take the blood pressure medicine, other complications could happen. And you ascertain that, as you said, by listening. Can you respond to that?
Well, I mean, I can offer some thoughts. I think that people don't like to be lectured to. And unfortunately, doctors tend to lecture a lot, probably because they were lectured to for years. And so if we were to say, Mark, you just have to take your blood pressure, you probably know that already. And you're probably, if you're not taking it, our nagging you is probably not going to make that much of a difference. What we found is the most effective approach is, and actually we don't take credit for this, others have looked at this as well, is if I were to say to you, Mark, I notice you're having some trouble taking your blood pressure. Let's talk about that. Tell me, what are some of the challenges you're having with taking your blood pressure? And then we would take it from there. We'd have a conversation. You might tell me a bunch of things that there's no way I could ever possibly know. They may be very practical matters having to do with where you can take pills, or they may have to do with anxieties you have, or whatever it is. But if I'm going to be helpful to you, it's going to have to be a two-way conversation.
And that's important, too, because we've been talking for 4 years now. I suggest to patients that when they go in, and especially meeting a new doctor, maybe a specialist, the doctor comes in and says, "Hi, Mark, I'm Dr. Smith." I almost said Dr. Schwartz, because that's usually what I say. But anyway, Dr. Smith. And the doctor, I always respond, "Hi, Alan, I'm Mark." Now, if the doctor gets, because it's a team effort, it has to be a team effort for the patient to make decisions on their health care. Would you agree with that? Would that really help break down that wall?
It's funny that you bring up that example, because actually when I first moved to Chicago and went to the doctor that I first saw here, he did exactly that. He said, "Hi, Alan, I'm Dr. So-and-so." And I said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Schwartz, but you can call me Alan, that would be fine." And then he got very apologetic, and he said, they tell us that we're supposed to, this was many years ago, but they tell us that we're supposed to use our last names so that, you'll trust us. We're supposed to use your first name so that it's more personal. I think, a lot of those kind of cultural authority things do get in the way of two people engaging with one another on an equal footing and trying to solve a problem.
And I think that first name basis could help. What do you think?
I agree. I just want to weigh in. I think that what's critical is that there not be an asymmetry. I think, two people, if it's Dr. Smith and Mr. Jones, that's okay too, if that's what makes people comfortable.
Correct.
But it can't be asymmetric. And I think that the point here is that if medical care is really about, ideally, two people trying to solve a problem or a group of problems, and that only really is optimal when everybody's comfortable and it's a level playing field.
And that's what we're trying to do with our book. See, I'm already I'm jumping in and becoming part of the team of Saul Weiner and Alan Schwartz in the book, Listening for What Matters. That's our book. I think it's a great book, and I think people should read it. I think doctors should read it more than patients. We'll talk about that when we come back. This is Late Night Health. If you go to latenighthealth.com and look under Listening for What Matters, you'll see a picture of both Saul and Alan, and you can kind of guess who wears the bow tie and who wears the regular tie. That'll be up to you. More coming up. Don't go away. And during hour 2, we'll be talking about really rare diseases and the development of drugs and therapies for them as we talk to the founder of NORD, N-O-R-D. More coming up. Don't go away. Late Night Health moves forward.